All right, this one is probably going to anger you guys just as much as it angers me. This is from Politico magazine, How to Fix Inequality. Pass an anti-racist constitutional amendment. This is from Ibram X. Kendi. Ibram X. Kendi is a professor of history, director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at American University, and author of How to Be an Anti-Racist. We all know that anti-racism is an ideology that is not just about not being racist. It is a Marxist ideology. It is an intersectional ideology. And it is one that views the world through an entirely racial lens and therefore cannot escape the grips of a racist outcome. Whenever you view the world, particularly through race, as if your pigmentation, your unattributable aspects like race are what's important, you're going to come out with a society that splits itself upon those lines. The only outcome of anti-racism is racism. But of course, they give it the nomenclature, just like Black Lives Matter is a misdirection nomenclature. You know, they attach a sentiment to what is a deeper, more pervasive uprooting of the American culture, the American value system, the American tradition. So, this is a short one, but probably not going to be too long of a video. The last video I did was way too long. So, to fix the original sin of racism, Americans should pass an anti-racist amendment to the U.S. Constitution that enshrines two guiding anti-racist principles. 1. Racial inequality or racial inequity is evidence of racist policy, and the different racial groups are equals. First of all, the second one already exists. We find it self-evident that all men are created equal under the eyes of God. Or I think I mixed up two things there. But yes, we already have the idea that all racial groups are equals. But equity and equality are not the same thing. Again, this is something where they use a term that sounds like equality, but it means something completely different. It means equality of outcome, essentially, not equality of opportunity. And so you can't look at racial inequity and understand and just automatically assume that it is because of racist policy. Also, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this, because you could look at one of the biggest sources of racial inequity in black culture today comes from the idea that single motherhood, that children being born out of wedlock and being raised with no father figures has created a very dire situation in the black community. Yet, if you were to pass this amendment, I could be called racist for pointing that out, despite the fact that the racist policy actually was that black mothers were financially incentivized to kick the men out of the house, and that have created this problem. So you can pass this constitutional amendment saying that racial inequity is evidence of racist policy, sure. But are you going to diagnose which racial policy actually caused the inequity? That is most likely not going to happen, because you have very few people like Ibram X. Kendi talking about what I just talked about. In fact, he would probably call me the racist for pointing out what is truly the greatest issue facing the black community. And it is a historic issue that goes back to the Great Society, Lyndon B. Johnson, 1964, where he even said this will have all of the voting Democrat for the next 200 years. So if you want to talk about racist policies, sure, they do exist, but you have to diagnose them correctly. If you are sick and you go to the doctor and they know that you have, some disease, but they don't want to tell you about it because they know it's going to be tough to deal with, say you go in there and you have cancer, and they're like, oh man, it is going to emotionally devastate this person to find out they have cancer. Let's tell them it's this that's more treatable. And you start treating them with that, and they don't get better, and they come back, oh, okay, well no, maybe it's this. And they treat them for something else, and they don't get better. Because that person has cancer, but you're not telling them they have cancer. You're not actually treating the issue. So this just doesn't do anything. All it's going to do is it's going to be used as a cudgel against people who actually might have policies that would help, but because they're uncomfortable, it's going to call them racist. And then the problems are going to perpetuate. They're going to persist. And then, of course, the only answer to that is going to be taking the property from some people and redistributing it to others. It's going to be communism. That is the only way that this plays out. Because if you know the left, if you know how the mentality of these anti-racist people are, you know that they cannot diagnose the actual problem correctly. Because they are out for power, and that's it. So let's see. The amendment would make it unconstitutional the amendment would make unconstitutional racial inequity over a certain threshold. How do you make that? How is that a constitutional issue? Again, it's mostly a cultural issue because we have no laws that bar anybody from getting a job based on race. In fact, we have quite the opposite. You have places that have quotas where they have to hire minorities. If anybody's affected, I mean, honestly, if you have these anti-racist laws, you're going to find out that a lot of things that have been, you could argue have not been helping the black community. I mean, there are good arguments about how things like affirmative action actually hurt people. Like say you score a 1250 on the SATs and you're perfectly good to go to a good school, a good university, but then you get into Harvard where you're in over your head, and then after a semester or two you drop out, and then all of a sudden you're a college dropout, you don't go back anywhere else. That can actually harm somebody. So that was a tangent. But you could see how if you make that argument then that affirmative action is no longer is no longer suitable under the anti-racist policy, well, now you could actually be losing benefits that you've reaped from your minority status. Now, is that going to be racist? I personally say no. I actually think that is a good thing. But I don't think those are the issues that they're going to be tackling through anti-racism. In fact, I think it's going to be an exacerbation of that. I think it's going to be an exacerbation of the exact problems that that are caused by affirmative action and things like that. So let's see. It would establish and permanently fund the Department of Anti-Racism. If that doesn't sound like Orwellian thought police, then I do not know what is, or what does. This is scary. So it'll permanently fund the Department of Anti-Racism, comprised of formally trained experts on racism and no political appointees. What defines a formally trained expert on racism? Racism is not a science. Sociology is one of the most bunk sciences out there. So it is really a field where the studies just are out to prove the hypothesis. And so, formally trained experts on racism. Now, are white people going to be allowed on that board of formally trained experts on racism, or are we going to be racially excommunicated from that? Because that sounds racist to me. So, I mean, there's so many red flags in this, and no political appointees. Okay, well then, how does that work? If you have no political appointees to the anti-racism division, what that's going to do is it's going to undermine the democratic process. And you're going to have a basically thought police division that is completely, has no account to the electorate, because you cannot vote in somebody who is going to change the direction of that department. That is an abolishment of our democratic processes of this republic. So that is also not good. I mean, what do you, and who's going to be in charge of it? This seems like it's going to be one of those deep state bureaucratic things where they feel like they have license to set forth their own mission and run the country however they see fit. And they are not going to be beholden to the people. So the DOA would be responsible for pre-clearing all local, state, and federal public policies to ensure that they won't yield racial inequity. How are you going to do that? These people don't understand the law of unintended consequences, for one. That they won't yield racial inequity. You cannot guarantee racial equity without being a totalitarian, communist, redistributive society. That is the only direction that you can, that is the only way that you could achieve that, and even still, all you're doing is going to be cutting down the tall grass, cutting down the tall trees. You're going to be creating a common denominator, a baseline that you're going to have to drag everybody down to. That is not the spirit of America. All right, so ensure they won't yield racial inequity. Monitor those policies, investigate private racist policies when racial inequity surfaces, and monitor public officials for expression of racist ideas that they are going to define on their own as a runaway department with no accountability to the electorate. Let that sink in. They're going to have no accountability, and anything they call racist is racist, and they're going to have complete jurisdiction over the entirety of our government. This man is insane. And I'm even willing to bet that his middle name doesn't start with an X. It's probably like Tyler or Steven. Ibram's probably not even his real name. All right, so, and monitor public officials for expression of racist ideas. The DOA would be empowered with disciplinary tools to wield over and against policymakers and public officials who do not voluntarily change their racist policy and ideas. Again. Completely unaccountable to anybody but their own. This Department of Anti-Racism would exactly be the Marxist takeover of America. This is what this would be. Because they would then be able to wield they're talking about a supreme power that can be wielded over all other government. There is nothing, you cannot pass a constitutional amendment that absolutely eradicates the Constitution. These ideas are dangerous. All right, guys, that's it for this video. This leaves me spellbound that we actually have people that think this way, that don't see the issues that I'm bringing up here, and that they think that this is a way to fix inequality. No. So please, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, share this, let people know what kind of psychopaths are trying to absolutely usurp our democracy from us, usurp our republic from us, and let people know what's going on. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. And also, if you're interested in contributing to the channel, I've got links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal listed down in the description below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you'll have a wonderful, wonderful day.